It's been nearly a year since rapper Y&W Melly's double murder trial ended in a mistrial.
You'll see the jury inquiry form. It indicates that after further discussions, reviewing the evidence and speaking freely amongst the jury, you're still unable to reach a unanimous decision. So at this time, what I'm going to do is just declare a mistrial because it's mistrial.
Since the mistrial, the case continued to make headlines after. The lead prosecutor was taken off the case, a new prosecution team was added, Melly's defense team had a little shakeup, but since, it seems as though the entire trial has been put on an indefinite pause. The South Florida rapper, whose real name is Jamel Demons, remains locked up in a Broward County jail. Melly's lockup hasn't stopped him from releasing new music in jail. And most recently, Melly was mentioned in a now viral Kendrick Lamar diss track geared toward the rapper Drake. Kendrick rapped, "Yeah, Cole and Aubrey know I'm selfish. The crown is heavy, I pray they my real friends, but if not, I'm Y&W Melly." The line seemingly refers to the deaths of Melly's childhood friends Anthony Williams, known as Y&W Sack Chaser, and Christopher Thomas Jr., aka Y&W Juvie. Melly responded to the line saying in part, "Kendrick Lamar is one of my favorite rappers, so I feel honored and appalled." Williams and Thomas were shot and killed in 2018 after a late-night studio session in South Florida. During Melly's first trial, the prosecution argued Melly was the one who pulled the trigger, killing both of his friends. But the defense argued Thomas and Williams were victims of a drive-by shooting, and Melly wasn't even in the vehicle with them at the time. Melly was charged with 2 counts of first-degree murder along with his friend and music collaborator Cortland Henry, aka Y&W Bortland. The state argues Bortland conspired with Melly to make it seem as though Williams and Thomas died in a drive-by shooting. During the trial, a Miramar Police Department officer who was working security detail at the hospital on that fatal night said Henry ran into the hospital saying his friends were shot.
So let's break that down. You're sitting at the security desk inside the ER. This male approaches you, and based on that contact, you exit the ER,
yes.
Correct? Where was that vehicle that you just described located?
So imagine I'm sitting at the desk as this, and there's door here. So he comes to this door on the left. As soon as I walk out that same door he came through, the vehicle's parked in the drive-through lane, and I can see the right side of the vehicle.
Okay, so it was immediately apparent upon you exiting the ER?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and what type of vehicle was this?
It was a blue Jeep SUV.
And you mentioned that there were some individuals inside. How many people occupied the vehicle at the time when you saw it?
One gentleman in the front passenger seat and one in the rear right passenger seat.
And when you approached the vehicle, was it apparent their condition?
Yes, they weren't moving.
Okay. How so were you able to, I guess, determine whether or not they were injured?
So immediately looking on the vehicle and, just the fact that there was multiple bullet holes inside, they weren't moving. Somebody was able for me to help them. They'd be in obvious pain, screaming, moaning, and there's nothing.
Did you attempt to render aid?
Yes. So I immediately, after waiting in for assistance and letting the security guard at the desk, hey, I need doctors and nurses and everything to come out to help me, put on gloves and reached inside the front passenger seat and checked the pulse of the gentleman, the right wrist. I didn't find anything.
Henry was initially released on bond and stayed free throughout the course of Melly's trial, but he reportedly violated his probation and ended up picking up additional charges, including witness tampering, and has been locked up in the Broward County Jail since. Melly's first trial was not without its courtroom antics, from back and forth between the prosecution, defense, and judge to less than willing witnesses.
Good morning, Ms. Holmes.
Good morning.
How are you today?
Not good.
Are you cold?
No, I'm just, I don't feel comfortable.
Are you nervous?
I feel threatened.
Felicia Holmes, the mother of Melly's ex-girlfriend Mariah Hamilton, was called as a witness by the state. The state pressed her about a phone call her daughter received from Melly on the night of the murders.
Tell the ladies and gentlemen of the jury what woke you up that morning.
Just hearing my daughter's voice.
Okay. What was the tone of her voice without saying what she said?
I don't remember. I don't remember.
Okay. Do you remember anything the defendant said on that video?
Not verbatim, no, I don't.
Okay. Did you have an opportunity to read the statement you gave in 2018?
I read the statement.
Okay.
I don't recall. I don't remember anything from that statement, but I do remember my deposition from December 22.
So the deposition, that would have been 6 months ago?
Yes.
Okay.
I want to go and when you spoke, remember speaking with law enforcement in December of 2018?
I remember speaking with them, but I don't remember what they look like. I don't remember their names, but I do remember talking to someone.
Okay, so Ms. Holmes, I want to ask you, were you honest and truthful with law enforcement when you spoke with them?
I would hope so. I mean, it was 2018. I went through a lot during that year, so I'm not sure where my mindset was at that time.
Did you lie to law enforcement?
I would hope not. But I don't remember what I said back. It was like 5 years ago.
Oh, of course. I understand it's been a long time. So in terms of the time frame, that was closer in time to the incident of October 26th of 2018?
If that's where you guys are saying it is.
You don't even remember?
I don't remember. Like I said, 2018 was a very hard year for me. My husband just went to prison. My father died. I had a lot going on, so
Of course.
I was really out of it.
Okay. And in terms of your conversations with the police officers that morning?
Yes. I do remember that they kind of bullied me and threatened my daughter to take her to jail for accessory after that. I do remember that.
Yes. And in terms of the statements that you made about what happened,
Yeah.
you don't have any recollection of
No.
that? Did you read this statement multiple times?
I looked at it and I just didn't recall it, and I don't remember.
And so you indicated you hoped you were truthful with law enforcement.
Yes, I did.
I have to ask you to be more definitive. Were you truthful?
I don't remember what I said to them back then, so if I was to tell you something now, I could be lying. I don't want to lie on the stand because you're going to take me to jail. So I'm saying what you want me to say.
I do not want you to say anything. I want you to tell the truth.
Okay, that's what I'm doing.
Okay. So, Ms. Holmes, with regards to that day, did you lie to law enforcement?
I
That's
just
just
answered
asked and
that for you.
answered.
Excuse me, hold on.
When you heard the phone call, did you hear what had allegedly happened?
I heard that there might have been a shooting.
Okay. Did you see any pictures or videos of anyone that was injured at that point?
No, I did not.
Did you see the defendant on the screen of that video call?
I saw his face, yes.
In terms of the method of communication, do you know if it was a FaceTime call?
I assumed it was FaceTime. I couldn't say for sure what kind of call it was.
At the time of October of 2018 through December of 2018, do you know the defendant's phone number?
No, I don't.
Do you recall today what the defendant's phone number was?
No, I don't.
Okay. In terms of the information and stuff that you have regarding that phone number, was that saved in your phone at that time?
It may have been. I can't remember.
Do you remember what phone number you had?
No, I don't. No, I don't.
So, Ms. Holmes, to go back in terms of looking at your statement or any of the other things, refresh your recollection as to what the defendant's phone number was and what you had at that time.
I'm sorry, could you repeat the question?
Sure. You said you didn't remember the defendant's phone number.
No, I don't.
Would looking at a copy of your statement help refresh your memory as to what?
No, I don't think it won't.
Okay. Would you like to try to do so?
You have to look at it for you, sure.
After confirming Melly had possession of his phone before and after the murders, as well as confirming she saw Melly's face on the phone with her daughter, the defense asked her one simple question while she was under cross-examination.
When you first took the stand, you said, "I feel threatened."
Yes, sir, I do.
Who do you feel threatened by?
Objection, Your Honor.
Overruled.
Christine Bradley, the prosecutor's office.
This prosecutor.
Yes, I do.
Thank you.
During Melly's first trial, it seems as though the state relied heavily on expert witnesses and testimony to prove their case, that Melly was in the car on that night Juvie and Sack Chaser were killed. The state called the pathologist who performed the victims' autopsies. Dr. Rebecca McDougall, who performed Anthony Williams, a.k.a. Y&W Sack Chaser's autopsy, confirmed Sack Chaser was hit by additional bullets when he was already dead.
Based on your autopsy, did you come to an opinion as to the cause and manner of death for Anthony Williams?
I did.
And what was that?
The cause of death is multiple gunshot wounds, and the manner of death is homicide.
Did you recover an additional projectile from the body of Anthony Williams?
I did.
And where was that located at?
In the right scapula, or the bone, your shoulder blade, the wing of your back.
And in this next photo that we're looking at here, which is number 19, this number, is that where you retrieved that particular projectile?
That's correct. So to orient you,
Sorry.
this is the neck, the back of the neck, the midline of the back. Okay, the entrance wound is right here. And it goes and it gets stopped by all that bone. And if you look at the muscles here, there's no hemorrhage either.
And so going on to this photo here, which is number 23, what are we looking at in that particular photo?
So that is the projectile that I recovered from the right side of the back.
Can I have a moment to consult?
Yes.
And so, Dr. McDougall, clear, we talked about B and D. Was the victim, Anthony Williams, dead when the B and D was inflicted to the body?
So when gunshot wound B was inflicted, yes, he was dead. And it exited D, so it's one gunshot wound.
Correct. So when wound C was inflicted, was Anthony Williams dead?
Yes.
Dr. Adrian Sauter, who performed Christopher Thomas Jr., aka YNW Juvie's autopsy, testified several of his wounds were inflicted after he was already dead.
If you could explain what this is?
This is showing the brain and the extensive subarachnoid hemorrhage it has, and the lacerations that you can see to the right side of the cerebellum, which controls your balance, and also to the pons and the medulla and the midbrain.
So in terms of where we're looking right now, can you give me an orientation? Is this top, bottom?
This is the bottom side of the brain.
Okay. And for the head that you have in front of you, the styrofoam, could you show where on that how that would be oriented and put in the same position?
So you would have to, so it's upside down and turned around.
Okay.
So if you were to cut this open and hollow it out, you would just literally flip it back in like that.
Okay. So what are we looking at in this photo here?
That is the base of the skull.
And what has been done to get access to this part of the skull?
So I inserted a rod to show that the trajectory from the injury from the left cheek went all the way through and crossed into the right side of the cranial occipital bone.
And in terms of, is there evidence of hemorrhage along this wound track?
Yes.
Would you have an opinion as to if the individual was alive or the heart was beating when this wound was inflicted?
Yes.
And what would that be?
Can you say that again? I'm sorry.
What would your opinion be?
So my opinion is that at the time that this gunshot wound was inflicted, because of all the hemorrhage to the base of the brain, that this individual was alive.
Okay. Going on to projectile number 7. Where was this projectile recovered from?
On the right occipital bone.
Same from the picture we just looked at?
Correct.
Okay.
But under cross-examination, the two pathologists testified it was unclear how far the shooter was from the victims.
And you indicated that one of the wounds was in the chest area.
Correct?
Were you advised at any time that this person was wearing clothes?
Yes?
Okay. And Moretti didn't bring the clothes to you to look at?
So my job's cause and manner of death on the body, right?
Okay. And the reason I ask that is because the height of the person, the weight of the person, the fact that he had 6 inches of braided hair, and the clothes that he was wearing would assist if anyone attempted to do what is known as a trajectory reconstruction, correct?
But you could do a modified Grice stain on the clothing to look for gunshot residue.
Okay. And those items would be important, would it not, if someone wanted to attempt to reconstruct how the shooting occurred?
So my job is cause and manner of death. I'm no expert in reconstruction.
The first injury to the head, was it?
Back of the
Back
neck.
of the head, was the fatal injury, right?
So in this case, that's the fatal injury because the other two, he was dead when they were
Okay.
inflicted.
So this person, when he received the other 2 injuries, was already deceased.
Correct.
Did not suffer any pain from those 2 injuries.
He's already dead.
Fair enough. Okay. and you indicated that these injuries were indeterminate,
Correct?
which means, in layman terms, simple terms for me to understand, means that you cannot tell how far away or how close the shooter or shooters were
That's correct.
when this occurred.
Yes, sir.
In fact, you don't know if it was one shooter, two shooters, or more, correct?
That's correct.
So you don't know the distance of the shooter or shooters, correct?
Correct.
You don't know the gun or guns that were used, correct?
Correct.
You don't know if the clothing was collected and examined,
That's not part of my job.
okay? And you don't know if the hair or the dreadlocks were examined by anybody from either the Miramar Police Department or the Broward Sheriff's Office, correct?
That's correct.
Now, you prepared a report, correct?
Yes.
That was in 2018 or 19, was it?
I believe
You can look at your report to get the date.
I completed and signed the report January 24th of 2019.
Now, you learned, did you not, approximately 3 years later, you had made a mistake in that report, correct?
Correct.
And you learned that and Dr. McDougall had to prepare another report for you,
She
correct?
amended the report. That's-
Amended the report for you
Yes.
3 years later.
Yes, because I no longer worked there anymore.
And you're aware, are you not, in order to place the shooter or shooters when this individual received all those injuries, that you need the same gun, correct?
Yes.
You need the same ammunition, correct?
Yes.
You need to look at the clothes and the hair and the stippling or the gunshot residue.
Other people do that, yes.
Yes, but you know that's
Yes,
necessary.
that's trained.
Okay.
To explain the distance and to exclude the possibility the fatal shots came from outside the car, the state called Sergeant Christopher Williams, a shooting reconstruction expert, to the stand.
Were there any defensive wounds on Anthony Williams?
No.
So there is testimony that there was a driver in a car. Could the driver, Portland Henry, have gotten that angular shot on Anthony Williams?
No.
Why not?
He would have to have a rather large arm. Like, he'd have to be Inspector Gadget.
So in terms of, did you measure the height of Mr. Henry?
Yes.
And what was that height? If you need to refer to your
For
report, please let me know.
he's 70.5 inches tall.
Okay. And in terms of his arm length, did you measure that?
No, I did not.
No. In terms of the height to his shoulder, did you measure that?
No.
So with regards to the length of his arm, why do you say he would have to have Inspector Gadget length arm to get that shot on Anthony Williams?
Because he would have to, it would be a very awkward position that his wrist is, no human wrist is simply capable of being in order to reach around, extend it out, and pull the trigger.
Okay. In terms of the intervening objects, how does that help you in saying where that firearm had to have been?
The firearm had to have been, would be due to the headliner being there. I'm sorry, the head rest being there. That all puts it all in line with the backseat driver passenger.
Okay. In terms of the angle for the driver to get the shot on Christopher Thomas, is that possible?
No,
Why not?
because the injury to Christopher Thomas's cheek is an exact circle, and if Cortland Henry is pointing back from the driver's seat to the direction of the position of Christopher Thomas, you would expect to see a leading edge injury to his cheek instead of a perfectly circle on his cheek.
Okay.
On top of it, you would see more blood on the seat that Cortland Henry was sitting in for both. If he were to make both shots of those two individuals, there would be a substantial amount of blood on his seat.
Okay. Now, speaking about the rear passenger, can you tell the ladies and gentlemen of the jury or identify who was in that seat?
The rear passenger,
Yes.
driver's side,
Yes.
I was advised that it was
Objection, here's
So, without going into that, in terms of what you were advised, can you say, based on your own personal knowledge, who was sitting in that seat at the time of this homicide?
that would be Mr. Timmons.
Okay. And how can you say that?
Can we approach?
Sure.
So, Mr. Williams was not even aware he was about to be shot. When Mr. Williams was shot, Mr. Thomas puts up his hands and is shot, and then is shot again.
Okay.
There's no time for anybody to switch a firearm. If there were, I believe one of those individuals would be alive. There's no time to switch. It was a very, a rather rapid event of firing.
Okay. Can you say the length of time between the fatal shots and then the staged drive-by shots later on?
It was enough time for the heart to stop beating, for there to be no circulation due to the wounds that I examined from the medical examiner's office. None of the wounds have any blood in them, which tells me that they're all ante-mortem wounds. So the time was long enough for the heart to stop beating.
Okay. Is there scientific or medical testing to recreate that in any way, shape, or form?
Yes, it's knowledge. It's I'm sure the medical examiner could say the same thing.
So in terms of, it's nothing that can be recreated with a live human.
Correct.
In terms of the number of shots, you said 17 outside the car. How many rounds were fired inside of the car?
3.
And can you exclude the shots to the head for Mr. Williams and Mr. Thomas as coming from outside of the car?
Yes.
How can you tell the ladies and gentlemen of this jury that, for example, shot that was marked as H in the here, let's go to 6755. How can you tell the ladies and gentlemen of the jury that shot H is not the one that wound up in the face of Mr. Thomas?
Because Mr. Thomas is already crumpling at this point, and he is actually he's in the clear, if you will, of site H.
How can you tell the ladies and gentlemen of the jury that site H is not the shot to the back of the head of Anthony Williams?
Because site H continues and strikes Anthony Williams in the shoulder.
In terms of site K, the one that goes completely across the car. How can you tell that no one was sitting in the rear driver's side seat when that bullet came through the car?
It would have hit their legs.
Was there any sign of blood or anything on that seat?
There were signs of blood on the seat, yes.
Prior to the shooting, Melly, Bortland, Juvie, Sack Chaser, and a few others were at a recording studio in South Florida for what was supposed to be a 12-hour recording session. Trayvon Glass, who was one of the men who was inside that recording session, said Melly got inside the car with Bortland, Juvie, and Sack Chaser after leaving the studio.
Mr. Glass, can you identify for the record, and I know there's a video, but can you identify which vehicle you got into?
Red Mitsubishi.
And can you tell us who was in that car with you?
Kobe, Tay, and 80.
So 80, Tay, and Cody.
Mm-hmm.
Is that a yes?
Yes.
So that is a total of 4 people.
Correct.
And in the vehicle to the left of the screen, the Jeep, who entered that vehicle to your knowledge?
Everybody else that was there. Zach, Melly, Julie, Court.
Okay. And by my count, is that also 4 people?
Correct.
Was Melly at the house when you got there, from what you can recall?
No.
Did you see Melly at any time in the house?
No.
Right? So you go upstairs in Juvie's room, and what do?
Crash.
All right? Crash meaning?
Go to sleep.
Okay. At some point, do you wake up?
Yeah.
And why? Or
Phone
how?
calls, phone calls, phone calls, phone calls.
Okay. Safe to say that your phone was getting a lot of phone calls, blowing up.
Yeah.
All right? And at some point, you answer the phone, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. What do you do in response to the phone calls?
I answered the one that kept ringing, and yeah.
All right. And so what do you do in response to getting that phone call?
I ended up at the hospital.
All right. Do you recall which hospital that was?
No, I don't.
Do you recall what city you were in at this point?
I was in Broward.
All right. What city? Not the county.
Miramar.
Okay. Do you know if you went to Miramar Hospital?
I don't know what hospital it was.
Okay. So you get to the hospital. What do you find out when you get to the hospital?
That Anthony and Christopher was deceased.
Glass said by the time Melly showed up to Frito Bang's house, he was in different clothes from the studio session.
Obviously, at that let me not say obviously, but at that point in time, what do you do, or how do you react to that news?
Grieving.
Okay. Do you stay at the hospital?
Not long.
All right. Where do you go after the hospital?
I ended up somewhere, somebody's house.
All right. Do you recall whose house that was?
I don't know whose house it was, but I ended up there.
Okay. And what were you doing at the house?
Still grieving.
Okay. Who took you to the hospital?
The cameraman,
Okay. Do you recall his name?
Drew.
All right. And do you recall who took you from the hospital to Frito's house?
Same person.
All right. And before you left for the hospital, or actually, who went to the hospital with you and Drew?
Just Drew.
Okay. Who was at the house, Melly's house, before you left for the hospital?
Same people that was there when we got there.
Okay. And same people being the 4 people that entered the Mitsubishi?
Yes.
Okay. So you're at Frito's house. You mentioned, and I forgot exactly where you were in the house. Did you say where you were?
Drew's room.
No, not Melly's house. Frito's house. Where were you in Frito's house?
Outside.
Okay. And who was at Frito's house when you first got there?
Everybody that wasn't at the house.
Okay. And it's because I don't know who everybody was or is, can you please specify?
Kobe, Melly. I'm on people I can remember.
Okay. Was that the first time you saw Melly after you guys left the studio?
Yeah.
Was Melly wearing the same clothes or different clothes than when you saw him at the studio?
It was a new day. Nah, he wasn't.
Nah, he wasn't. You guys
He wasn't wearing the same clothes.
Okay. Do you recall what he was wearing?
Just had on some shorts.
Under cross-examination, the defense asked if there was any tension between Melly, Juvie, and Sack Chaser during the studio session that night.
Have you ever seen Melly with a gun?
Objection, Your Honor.
I sustain the objection.
Have you ever seen him track with a gun?
Possibly. Yes. Maybe. Maybe so.
You don't know of any friction between Melly and Anthony Davis at any time, Anthony Williams at any time?
Not I know of.
And you don't know of any friction between Melly and Christopher Thomas at any time?
Not I know of.
And you don't know of any friction that occurred at the studio that night that would cause anybody to get murdered?
Objection, Your Honor. False speculation.
Sustain.
You didn't see any friction at the studio that night of any magnitude?
I did.
You did?
I didn't.
Okay, you did. With respect to your daily marijuana regimen, did you smoke before you came here today?
I did not.
Okay. I have nothing. Thank you.
I should have.
The final witness for the state's case was the controversial Detective Mark Moretti, the case's lead investigator. Moretti, who arguably played a central role in the dismissal of lead prosecutor Christine Bradley, testified during Melly's first trial. The state spent weeks trying to prove Melly has been using a specific phone ending with 9807 at the time of the murders, while his defense team argues the phone allegedly used by Melly was communal and couldn't be tied to just him. But Moretti presented evidence Melly used the phone to communicate with his mom, ex-girlfriend Mariah Hamilton, and used the phone for Snapchat.
Publishing page 52, phone number 6942, message sent 10/27/18 at 3:40 a.m. Love you. Same phone number, message sent same date at 3:23 p.m. I'm at your gate. I'm going to get the trash.
From 9807, sent 10/28/2018, 10:33 a.m. Bring Mariah.
Phone number 6942, message sent October 28, 2018, 11:22 a.m. Okay. Detective, you can skip that next message and move on to the final message on the page.
From 9807, sent 10/28/2018 to 2:09 p.m. Like, go now.
Publishing page 53. Phone number 6942, message sent on October 28th of 2018, 2:17 p.m. Okay, what's wrong?
From 9807, sent 10/28/2018 to 22 p.m. I'll pay you. From 9807, same date at 2:22 p.m. When you get down here.
Phone number 6942, sent 10/28/18 at 2:22 p.m. Okay. Same phone number, same date, sent at 2:23 p.m. I'm waiting on track to cash at me the 1,000. Same phone number, same date at 2:23:40 p.m. Is someone threatening you? Publishing page 54.
From 9807, 10/28/2018 to 2:23 p.m. No, Mom. Phone number 9807, 10/28/2018 to 2:23 p.m. I'm not scared. From 9807, 10/28/2018 to 2:24 p.m. Just listen.
From 6942, October 28, 2018 at 2:24:06 p.m. Okay, I want you safe. Same phone number, same date at 2:24:28 p.m. You're covered.
From 9807, 10/28/2018 at 2:24 p.m. I know.
Publishing page 55.
From 9807, sent 10/28/2018 to 2:24 p.m. Still need to protect myself.
Phone number 6942, sent October 28, 2018 at 2:53 p.m. FaceTime me.
from 9807 at 10/28/2018 at 3:06 p.m. J. Finn ascended from 9807, 10/28/2018 at 3:06 p.m. He fit and ascend 500.
Phone number 6942, message sent October 28 at 3:06 p.m. Okay. Same phone number, message sent same date at 3:06:23 p.m. Okay.
During the course of the investigation, did you author a number of search warrants?
Yes, ma'am.
Approximately how many search warrants do you think you authored?
Well over 40, ma'am.
Okay. Did those include search warrants for the Instagram social media of Cortland Henry?
Yes, ma'am.
Approximately how many of those were done for Cortland Henry?
We did one for Cortland Henry's Instagram account, one for his Gmail account, and one for a phone number associated with him.
Were there any indications in those social media accounts or anything else that he was using the YNW Melly account?
No, ma'am, none whatsoever.
Were there any indications that Mr. Henry or anyone else was saying contact or talking about any indications of using the 9807 phone number?
No, ma'am.
During the state's opening statement, prosecutor Christine Bradley told the jurors Melly allegedly confessed to the murders by sending a message saying, "I did that. Shh." While under direct by the state, Moretti said that message was sent to rapper Peasy Gambino after Peasy asked if Melly was okay following the shooting.
On October 26th of 2018 at 20:02:18 UTC, what does the YNW Melly account state?
I did that with a smiley emoji.
In terms of what was that in response to from the Peasy Gambino account?
Objection. Overruled.
The PC Gambino account asked him if he was okay, and his response was, "I did that," and placed a smiley face emoji.
And the next message from 10/26/2018 at 16:02 from Eastern Standard Time, the YNW Melly account says what?
After that, SHHHH.
And could you please stand and point on the right side of the screen exactly which part you're saying where the YNW Melly account says, "I did that"?
I did that. This is the thread ID. This is the text. This is the author. And this is the recipient. Then you come down here, same thing. The ID is for the actual message, which is just specific that one message. Then the thread ID is the actual continuing message. Then come down here to it says text. The SHHHH.
Under cross-examination, Melly's defense team argued Melly uses the informal spelling DAT when texting, not THAT.
Will you tell the jury how he spells that?
DAT.
DAT. Page 2. Will you tell the jury how he spells that?
DAT.
DAT. Not THAT. DAT, correct?
Right.
Page 3, coming out of 9807. How does he spell that?
DAT.
So when Melly spells the word that, you want me to go through all 19 pages? Or will you take my word that every time, coming out of 9807 that's attributed to this young man as writing the message, he does not spell it THAT, but DAT. Would you like to look through them?
No, sir. You're asking me to explain that the one moment he decided to use proper grammar.
One moment. These phone messages sitting there.
One at a time. All right. What's the objection? Overruled.
These phone messages that the state introduced sitting on this pages that we painfully went through, he spells it DAT, not THAT. except for this one occasion, right?
Correct.
What a strange thing. I'm sorry, Judge. I apologize.
The defense also questioned Detective Moretti about not obtaining a search warrant for the house Melly shared with the men who were also seen leaving the studio.
You then, during October 26th, get the surveillance tape of the people coming out of the recording studio, correct?
On which date, sir?
The 26th.
Yes, sir.
You respond to the hospital in the morning.
Yes, sir.
By mid-afternoon, you get the surveillance tape, correct?
Yes, sir.
You identify, do you not, by the end of October 26th, all 8 people that left the recording studio?
I think we had more like the 27th, everyone was pretty much identified.
Okay. By October 27th, you identified Cortland Henry, correct?
Yes, sir.
Anthony Williams,
Yes, sir.
Christopher Thomas,
Yes, sir.
Trevon Glass,
Yes, sir.
Melly,
Yes, sir.
I'm missing 3.
Jacoby Mills and
Jacoby Mills,
Dontavius Withers
Dontavius Withers, and Adrian Davis.
Davis.
All 8 people that left the recording studio, and 2 had passed away, correct?
Yes, sir.
And you knew where all 8 of them were living, correct?
Yes, sir.
And that was at the 18720, whatever that address I read off before.
The Sunset Lakes 184 Southwest 44th Street.
You had that address, correct?
Yes, sir.
And you had observed the bloody scene of inside the Jeep, correct?
Correct.
And you knew that Cortland Henry had lied to you.
Correct.
So you certainly, at that point, obtained a search warrant to look at that house to see if you could find any blood, any gun, or anything to tie up what happened in that car, correct?
There is no way we could have got a search warrant for that house because there was no nexus to the crime to the house. And I have to establish a nexus between the two or the judges will not sign the warrant.
Did you even try, sir, to get a search warrant and go in front of a judge and say, I got 8 people who left the studio. They all live in the same house. The driver of the vehicle we interviewed lied, and the inside of the Jeep is covered in blood, and we're looking for the gun or guns and the bloody clothes involved in this. Did you bother to do that, sir?
So like I said before, there was no connection between the house and the crime itself. Now,
The answer-
where we had blood, where we had evidence, where we had instruments of a crime, we did search warrants. Anytime we had a nexus between the two, we did a search warrant. We never had a nexus between the two. We even went to that house that day, knocked on the door, there was no one there.
You could have secured that house by officers standing in front of it and at least come to this jury and say, I went to a judge, explain to the judge, 8 people live in a house, 8 people left the studio, and a few hours later, 2 people ended up dead, and the driver of the vehicle lied to us about everything concerning the shooting. You could have done that, could you?
No, that's not how that works, sir.
Not how it works. Fair enough. Did you get a search warrant of the house in November at all?
You mean for which house, sir?
The house where Melly lived.
No, sir.
How about December?
They were already gone at that point.
You could have looked for blood, traces of blood, because we saw that you sprayed this agent on things and miraculously blood surfaces. You know that.
Yes, sir.
Did you do that?
No, sir.
You mentioned to the state that you spoke to an Adrian Davis and a Dontavius Withers, correct?
Yes, sir.
They were the two of the individuals that originally left the studio
Yes, sir.
and got into the red Mitsubishi.
Correct.
You learned from that.
Objection, hearsay.
I haven't even asked a question.
Watch himself.
When it turned over to the defense's case, they only presented one witness, Melly's friend, Adrian Davis. Davis seemingly turned the prosecution's case on its head. He said Melly was at home during the murders.
And what was the purpose of going to the studio?
To make music.
Did anyone fall asleep at the studio?
Yes.
Who?
We all did.
That was from the day of smoking weed and having a few drinks.
Yeah.
Fair enough. Did any arguments occur between any of you at the studio?
No, not at all.
Did there come a time that you all left the studio?
Yes.
Did you leave the studio earlier than what was scheduled?
Yeah, I believe so. So we were all in there asleep.
Will you tell the jury who got into the red Mitsubishi?
Me, Jacoby, Trayvon, and Tate, Dontravius.
Okay. You know who got into the Jeep?
Cortland, Jamel, Seth, and Judy.
Where were you going? Did anyone fall asleep in your car?
Yeah, we about all did except for the driver.
Did there come a time that you were woken up before you got to the house?
Yes.
What happened?
We pulled over, and that's when Melly got in the car with us.
Do you know where you pulled over?
And I don't really remember.
Were you woken up?
Yeah, but
Why?
it was like, because I was getting pushed over a little bit.
Were you woken up?
Yeah, but
Why?
it was like, because I was getting pushed over a little bit.
Okay. And are you 100% sure that this young man got into the red Mitsubishi?
Yes.
What happened to the Jeep?
I think they just kept going.
Did he have to unlock the door?
Yes.
Do you know who has the keys to Melly's house on October 26th in the early morning hours?
Jamel and Borton. They the only one who had keys to the house.
Did you have a key to the house?
No.
Did Williams have a key to the house?
No.
Did Christopher Thomas have a key to the house?
No.
Did Trevon Glass have a key to the house?
No.
Did Jacoby Mills have a key to the house?
No.
And how about Dontavius Williams? Did he have a key?
No.
Okay. So the only two people you know who had a key to the house was this young man
Yes.
and Cortland Henry.
Yes.
Did you see this young man unlock the door of the house?
Yes.
Who was the last person to get out of the red Mitsubishi to go inside the house?
Trayvon, he was in the car still asleep.
He was in the car asleep when you got to his house?
Yeah.
Did there come a time in the early morning hours that you were woken up and heard some distressing news?
Yes.
What did you hear?
The second Julie was shot.
When you heard that, did you see Melly in the house?
Yes.
Did you see Melly how he was dressed in the house?
Yes.
What was he wearing?
Shorts and a t-shirt, I think.
Okay. Upon hearing that Sack and Juvie, and I really should use the correct names, Anthony Williams and Christopher Thomas, were shot, what did you guys do?
We were already dressed and stuff, so we just left with Fredo's house.
Was anybody upset or crying?
Yeah, we all were crying.
Was this young man crying?
Yes.
Are you sure of that?
Positive.
And where'd you go?
Fredo's house.
That would be Fredo Bang?
Yeah.
Do you know Fredo Bang's real name? Frederick Gibbons, by any chance?
Yeah, I think I've seen it.
Did there come a time after you got to the house of Fredo Bang that Cortland Henry showed up?
Yes.
Did Cortland Henry tell you what happened?
Yeah, he said it was a drive-by.
When Cortland Henry arrived at Fredo Bang's house, was Melly there?
Yes.
Did you eventually leave that house?
Yes.
Approximately what time did you leave that house?
I really don't remember.
Where'd you go?
Back to Jamel's house.
Who went with you?
Me, Trayvon, Jacoby, and Fetty.
By the way, when you first learned that Anthony Williams and Christopher Thomas were shot at the house with Melly, did anyone get on the phone?
Yeah.
Did anyone have any problem locating their phone?
Yes.
Who was that?
Jamel.
While under cross-examination by the state, Davis maintained he was telling the truth, reiterating Melly was inside the home when he found out Juvie and Sack Chaser were killed.
Mr. Davis, you said you're 100% sure that Mr. Dennis found out at the same time you did.
Yes.
No questions about that. You're sure he was at that house?
Yes.
And you were upstairs?
Yes, ma'am.
He was downstairs.
Yes.
But you're sure he was there. You could see him.
Mm-hmm.
Is that a yes?
Yes.
And you are 100% sure his phone was missing?
Yes.
Where in the statement on May 5th did you ever say that?
Objection.
Suggestion.
It was never asked.
Thank you. Counsel, so I guess the objection is improper impeachment, so rephrase your question. I just think
So,
objection.
you met with me on May 5th of 2022, you remember that?
Yes.
And you remember sitting down, you were present, that's a yes?
Yes.
Your two attorneys were present that you brought, that's a yes?
Yes.
And I asked you questions for quite a number of hours. Do you remember that?
Yes.
Okay. And do you remember being asked if you had met with anyone else with regards to this case?
Yes.
Okay. And do you remember being asked if you had met prior to speaking with me with the attorney sitting over to my left?
Yes.
Okay.
I didn't know who they were, and my lawyers told you that.
Okay.
I didn't know their names.
But you remember meeting with them?
Yeah.
Okay. And do you remember asking and being asked a question about what you talked about with them?
Yes.
Did you remember what you told them?
No.
Do you remember what you told them now?
Yes.
So are you telling this jury that when you were speaking with me, you forgot?
As in, what I'm telling them now, as of right now, yes.
You remember going to Frito Bank's house?
Yes.
Okay. And you remember seeing the defendant there? Is that a yes?
Yeah, he was there with us.
And you remember leaving there afterwards?
Yes.
And you remember going back to the defendant's house?
Yes.
Okay. And you remember at that point that when you went back to the defendant's house, it was you, Travion Glass, or Fetty, and Jacoby Mouse. That's it?
Yes, I believe so.
Okay. And you said that you were in and out of sleep and intoxicated.
Yes.
And in terms of you remember that Travion was the last person to get out of the car?
Yeah, I believe so, yes.
You believe so, or do you remember? Which is it?
Yes.
And you know, and you mentioned about Mr. Demons looking for his phone, right?
Yes.
So of course he used your phone to call it and try and find it, right?
I don't remember.
You don't remember how he was trying to find his phone?
Just in the house looking for it, just like you would do if you lost yours.
So he didn't, try and find my iPhone or anything like that. Of course he used yours to do that, right?
I don't remember.
Of course he used something like, an Apple iWatch and set it up.
Objection, there's no testimony that he had it.
I don't remember.
Excuse me.
Okay.
One at a time. You asked the question. Objection notice. Overruled.
So of course he did all that. He went on, find my iPhone, and he's looking for it.
I don't know. I don't remember.
You don't remember. Okay. And of course he is using everybody else's phone to try and find it.
I don't know.
You don't remember. Okay. But conveniently the phone's missing that morning.
Objection to the form.
Sustained.
Yes.
I sustain the objection.
So with regards to your conversation, you texted back and forth with the defendant prior to this event occurring, right?
Yes.
And he sent you a picture of his driver's license from that phone number.
Yes.
Oh. So you knew Mr. Demons, the defendant Melly, to use that cell phone 772-713-9807.
I don't know what the numbers is.
You have them saved in your phone, right?
Yeah, but I can't just remember that phone number like that. From that long ago.
Oh. And your testimony is that he's looking all over the house.
Yeah.
For the phone. So in terms of the phone, did you see it again that day?
I don't remember.
Don't remember. Okay. And in terms of the phone traveling up to the video shoot up in Cocoa, you don't know how the phone got up there.
I don't know.
And you didn't shoot Mr. Williams or Mr. Thomas, right?
No.
But you know who we're talking about, right?
Chris and Anthony.
Yes. And in terms of the messages and things for Mr. Henry, you're aware that his phone was broken at that time, right?
I don't know.
You don't know.
I don't know.
In terms of Mr. Demons, you know he was dating Mariah Hamilton.
Yeah.
Okay. And you know that Mr. Demons would FaceTime her on a regular basis.
Objection.
What's the objection?
There's no evidence of that.
I don't know.
Overruled.
So you know, and Mr. Demons would,
Excuse me, use the correct name.
Mr. Demons, my apologies. Mr. Demons would FaceTime and video chat frequently.
Yes, that's what you got a phone for.
And Mr. Davis, you never met with Detective Mark Melly? You never gave a statement?
No, ma'am.
And so the first time that you ever said anything about the phone being missing was today, July 18, 2023?
Yes, I believe so.
Okay. Nothing further, Your Honor.
During closings, the state argued once again the phone ending in 9807 could have only belonged to Melly.
So let's talk about whose phone it is. And I know it was a lot of video of pictures to watch. I know that. I'm not going, and we've all know that I can count to 500 and stuff. So I want to make sure that everyone understands why it's important as to who the phone shows. All of these photos, all of these FaceTimes show the defendant. There's not a single instance that's been put before you in that phone, which is in evidence, it states 64 of the extraction, and then the phone itself as well, that says, hey, this is so-and-so, I'm using Melly's phone. You don't have that because it doesn't exist. Instead, you have this defendant using his phone, and he's the only person using this phone. And so, ladies and gentlemen, it's important to note that this isn't the polished, perfect shots. These are the outtakes. These are the ones that aren't suitable for public consumption, that aren't put out on Instagram, that aren't put out there to promote an album or anything like that. These are the raw images. That's why it's important to look at those. And ladies and gentlemen, just because there's a photo on this phone of something else, you take a photo of your dog with your phone, it doesn't mean it's your dog's phone. You're taking pictures of what's important to you. I submit to you, you can tell based on these photos and these videos what's important to this defendant. The videos. Just going to play one, but this is, like I said, a sample of the 1,000 some. This one is interesting because you see the reflection of the phone in the glasses.
You see, this is good. Clean this and lose the bird. I have a little.
Your mama. That's the mama.
The videos also show, if you recall, the video of the Western Union transaction. 772-713-9807. October 2nd of 2018. This is the only individual that is using this phone.
And despite no murder weapon being recovered, the state argued that it was only Melly who could have pulled the trigger.
And so some of the things that you can look for premeditation, the nature of the weapon used. So having the firearm already. And ladies and gentlemen, how do you know that they had the firearm already and the defendant had the firearm already? Because he asked for it the day before. Remember, on October 25th, Jamel Demons, 9807, sent a text message to Anthony Williams asking, where's the fire at? FYE. And Mr. Williams says, it's in here with us. And if you look at the context of the conversations, that shows they were driving down from a location in Stewart, and they were driving to pick the defendant up at the airport. Mr. Williams brought his own murder weapon to the defendant. Look at the rest of the conversations. There's multiple discussions about this firearm. Where's the firearm? From Mr. Williams to Mr. Demons earlier on. It's in my closet, third shoebox. This is discussed. That is not a lighter. That is not a really great song. That's a firearm, ladies and gentlemen. There is discussion about firearms. The presence or absence of adequate provocation. When you look at that and you're looking at this case, they were friends, right? They were buddies since they grew up. But look at the stress being placed on this defendant as the only one bringing the money in, as the only person who was paying the bills. Look at the tension on there, right? Look at the issues and concerns with Mr. Williams, Anthony Williams, and the defendant's mother, that they're fighting an argument. The message is on there to that effect. So look at, for premeditation, you can also look at the manner in which the homicide was committed. Anthony Williams was shot in the back of the head. That was planned for when he was sleeping so that he could not fight back. That was a premeditated, planned killing of Anthony Williams, where there would be an alibi already discussed. So then, Christopher Thomas. Premeditation, as the judge instructed you, does not require days, weeks, months of planning. Premeditation can be formed quickly. Example we used in jury selection. Going to your mom's house on Mother's Day. You forget to bring flowers. You reach down, pull some flowers out of her yard and give her to those. That is premeditation. That is thinking about something, then doing it. Ladies and gentlemen, I submit to you the murder of Christopher Thomas was premeditated in that as well. Chris Thomas, as you saw with Sergeant Williams and Mr. Howard demonstrating, oh my goodness, what's going on? Mr. Demmons then made the decision at that point he couldn't have a witness. So look at that. Those are all things in which you can get premeditation, how it was committed, the wounds that were inflicted, the back of the head. Ladies and gentlemen, you have a confession in this case. The defendant, and now look at the time. Remember we talked about the UTC? So subtract 4. So UTC 2,000 hours. You subtract 4, 1,600 hours. You do the conversion. So 4 p.m. 4 p.m. I did that with the smiley face. And that's what I said in opening. Context is key. And look at the messages between Mr. Demmons and Mr. Gambino. Easy Gambino is a blood gang member. He uses all those same information, slang words, changing of the letters that you learned about from Detective Polo. October 26th, he asks to reach out to see how the defendant's doing. And the defendant says, I did that. And to make a spelling that, other times he uses DAT. And gentlemen, you saw the song where he has a song that he's released called THAT in his phone.
But during the defense's closing argument, one of Melly's attorneys, Stuart Adelstein, told the jury authorities conducted a sloppy investigation.
But let's go into the 11 witnesses now. The first one, and they mentioned him, George Bello, the manager, the head guy of the gun and tool mark unit of the entire Broward Sheriff's Office. And he tells you, after we get a great education of guns and projectiles and casings, we have to bring out the fact that can you tell or determine the distance between the shooter and the victim? Can you tell us that with all your experience? And what does he say? I can't do it unless I have the weapon, unless I have the ammunition, because ammunition, the weight of ammunition could change the distance. And you have to have the weapon in order to do that. He cannot even tell us if it was one gun 2 guns or more. He's honest. He tells you that without the weapon used, I cannot place the shooter to the victim, or victims in this case. Now, why is that important? Because a reasonable doubt can arise from a conflict in the testimony. If you believe George Bello, and I suggest you should, then he totally contradicts all the testimony of Sergeant Williams, who comes in here 4 and 5 years later and says, I can tell you where shooter 1 was, and I can tell you who the shooter is. You talk about a conflict in the testimony? It's one or the other. It can't be both. And then they call the star witness, the lead detective, Detective Moretti. We know he doesn't look at the surveillance tapes on the various Miramar Parkway and Pines and what have you, because he knows. He's worked the area. He knows that he got 9807, the phone that Melly has used, and you've seen various and a lot of photographs. I think it's Exhibit 115, am I correct? 100, excuse me, 100. And who did they get this phone from? Detective Moretti. Jameson Francois. And certainly you asked him, how long have you had this phone? And he says, I never asked him. How convenient. And he goes and says there was another phone in the vehicle, but it was broken. That's 115. 115. So I can't tell you whose phone that is. Now, we don't have a burden to do anything. If you recall, we asked him to take out the SIM card of this broken phone. And there was a reason for it, to tell you the quality of the investigation. He took out that SIM card, read the serial number from that SIM card, which he had never done until you saw him open this phone in the courtroom. And he agreed that you can take that serial number to T-Mobile, Sprint, and what have you, and determine whose phone is, who is the owner, subscriber, and get a warrant for that phone. You've got warrants on a lot of phones. Get a warrant on this phone if you want to see what it is. Moretti doesn't want to do that because he's afraid. And then the state rests. They say, folks, we've presented you all the evidence. Well, that wasn't true, because we had to call Adrian Davis. And you learned that Adrian Davis showed up in the state attorney's office and gave a sworn statement. They never told you this. We did. We don't have to do any of this. And Adrian Davis said, I told you. He got in the car. How do I know that? Because I was woken up when someone was crawling in the back seat. How do I know that? When we got to Melly's house, he's the one who had to open the door. Because only he and Cortland Henry have the key to his house. Why do we have to do that? Why did they conceal that from you? Why did they hide that from you? I can't answer those questions, folks, but I don't have to. other than to say reasonable doubt.
The reasonable doubt argument from the defense clearly resonated with the jury because after a little more than 14 hours of deliberations, the panel of 5 men and 7 women couldn't come back with a unanimous decision as the weeks-long trial ended in a hung jury.
The juror inquiry form, it indicates that after further discussions, reviewing the evidence and speaking freely amongst the jurors, we are still unable to reach a unanimous decision. So at this time, what I am going to do is just declare a mistrial, the case was mistried, and indicate to you that how much we appreciate the fact that you were here and willing to serve. One thing I try to tell jurors at the beginning of the trial process, all through voir dire, is how much we appreciate the fact that they're here and willing to serve. Our system doesn't work without getting people from the community to come in here and listen to the facts of the case and make decisions. These type of decisions, they're hard decisions, and we very much appreciate the fact that you gave us the time because we've been here a long time. We understand that. You gave us some time and you put your best effort to see if you can bring the case to a resolution. Unfortunately, it wasn't able to happen, but I want to thank you again for your time and consideration of the case. I also want to advise you of some very special privileges enjoyed by jurors. No juror can ever be required to talk about the discussions that occurred in the jury room except by court order. For many centuries, our society has relied upon juries for consideration of difficult cases. We have recognized for hundreds of years that a jury's deliberations, discussions, and vote should remain their private affair as long as they wish it. Therefore, the law gives you a unique privilege not to speak about the jury's work. The lawyers and their representatives are not permitted to initiate any communication with you about the trial. However, you may speak with the lawyers or anyone else about the trial. You also have a right to refuse to speak with anyone. A request may come from those who are simply curious or from those who might seek to find fault with you. Then, it will be up to you to decide whether to preserve your privacy as a juror or not. And again, I want to thank you very much for your time and attention. It's very much appreciated. You're free to go.
After Melly's first trial, his defense motioned for a release on bond. However, that motion was denied. But the fireworks and courtroom drama didn't end just with the mistrial. Months later, Judge John Murphy ruled to take lead prosecutor Christine Bradley off the case. The issue stemmed from what Melly's defense team referred to as a cover-up between Bradley and lead investigator Mark Moretti. The defense claimed Bradley covered up a report about Moretti asking a Broward County Sheriff's deputy to lie about being present while serving a search warrant to Melly's mother, Jamie King. The allegations derive from when Melly met with King in October of 2022 when questioning her about alleged witness tampering. During the questioning, Moretti executed a search warrant to seize her phone. But Assistant State Attorney Michelle Boudreaux, who was a witness to the incident, testified she overheard Moretti ask the deputy to lie about being present during the seizure.
Mr. Trackman and Ms. King leave.
They leave the room.
Okay, what happens next?
Once they leave the room, Deputy Gorell, who I didn't know his name, he came into the room, and Detective Moretti looked at him and said, "You need to."
For your thing?
Deputy Moretti said Detective Moretti said to Deputy Morell, "You need to say you were here when I served that search warrant." And it was kind of like an awkward moment. Someone described it just kind of getting punched twice in the head. So there's a search warrant that gets served, and I'm like, what's going on? And then the next thing, he's asking this deputy to lie for him. And again, I'm like this isn't like, I'm in the twilight, so I'm like, this can't really be happening. Deputy Gorell didn't say anything of any substance. I think he said, "Is there anything I'm needed for anymore?" or something like that. I don't remember if he said anything at all. It was just a very awkward moment after Detective Moretti said that to him.
And you specifically remember what was said?
I vividly remember what was said, yes.
So after that was said and after Gorell leaves, do you say anything to Moretti?
No, I don't say anything to Moretti. I leave the room, I'm done with the statement. As far as I'm concerned, I'm done investigating this case.
Why?
Because I don't work with detectives that solicit lies.
Okay. What did you do then?
I reported it immediately on that day.
Boudreaux testified she reported the incident to her supervisors, but Bradley, who also testified during the hearing, defended Moretti's actions, saying the whole thing was a joke.
Is that true that Detective Moretti said to you that what he said was a joke?
No, what was intended to be conveyed was that Deputy Gorell, his response was flippant in nature. That was the joking aspect of it.
Okay, so if somebody from your office sends out a Brady notice in this case, not authorized by you, correct?
That is correct.
And in that Brady notice that I just showed you, you're saying that there are incorrect statements of fact in it.
That is correct.
And the incorrect statement is that you were not told by Moretti that he was joking.
That is correct. The indication has always been, and if it was inartfully conveyed in some point, the indication has always been that Deputy Gorell responded in a very flippant manner when asked about showing up.
Flippant manner to whom?
To Detective Moretti.
Does he say that in his report, Gorell?
I don't believe so.
Okay. So the flippant manner came from Moretti, and somehow you communicated that Moretti said it was a joke. Is that what we're putting together?
I did not say that Moretti said that he had made a joke in any way, shape, or form.
So you've never made the statement that Moretti said he was joking?
My statement was, at all times, and if it was ever not clear or misinterpreted by whoever was listening to it, was that Deputy Gorell made the statement that was of a flippant nature.
In late August of 2022, Bradley filed what's called a Brady notice, which requires prosecutors to disclose material and exculpatory information to the defense. But as Michelle Boudreaux testified, the notice made no mention of Detective Moretti's controversial statement. It wasn't until nearly a year later, in September of 2023, months after Judge Murphy declared a mistrial in Melly's first trial, that Boudreaux became aware that no Brady notice was ever filed and brought it to the attention of the state attorney's office. According to Melly's defense team, Bradley didn't file the notice. Instead, it was filed by another assistant state attorney. Bradley would eventually file the notice about Moretti's statement, but again chalked it up to being a joke. The judge would ultimately remove Bradley from the case, making way for another prosecutor to take over as lead. Bradley was replaced by Alexandra Buckaloo, who is no stranger to high-profile cases. She was on the same prosecution team that successfully tried the case against 3 men who were convicted of murdering rapper XXXTentacion. However, since Buckaloo took over the helm, there has seemingly been a pause on the case. Initially, jury selection for the retrial was slated for October, but it ended after the state opted to appeal a December ruling by Judge Murphy that threw out evidence of Melly's phone records, emails, social media posts, and the documentary/promotional video, which was released shortly after the murders. The documentary, which was filmed before the murders, revisits Melly's childhood life and rise to fame. At the end of the 20-minute video, it mentions the deaths of Juvie and Sack Chaser, saying Melly and his friends were the targets of a drive-by shooting. The state says the video proves Melly was in the car for the murders. However, the defense argues it's just hearsay. Since then, there have been no significant developments moving the case forward, putting Melly's retrial on pause indefinitely. It's unclear how long Melly's trial will be delayed, as prosecutors hope an appeals court overturns the judge's decision. Reporting for Law and Crime, I'm Elizabeth Milner.